This is coming from our heart. This is not coming from somebody asking us to do this. We believe that this is one of the most important conversations we can have right now.
We want to invite you on a journey.
Yeah,
a conversation. This isn't just for us.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to A Resilient Conversation with Scott and PJ. We have got a great live stream for you tonight. Make sure you let your friends know, let everybody know we're on. This is a different time than usual, so we'll see how everybody likes that.
Yeah, 7 o'clock. I mean, this is at night now.
Yeah, we'll see. But we're hoping to try it, and you guys let us know. Let us know if you like it better now or you like it better earlier in the day. And if we need to, we'll switch it around from time to time. We also want to welcome all of you who are brand new. We have picked up several new followers on our page, and so we want to welcome you. And for that reason, we want to introduce ourselves real quickly. Maybe some of you who have been watching for a while don't even know really who we are or why we're together. My name is Pastor Joshua, or PJ. And I'm a pastor in West Michigan at a fairly small church. I would say we're a small town, one stoplight. We have somewhere around 100 people in our church on Sunday mornings. So we are not a huge church at all. And Scott happens to be my Awana missionary. So that's how we met. And one of the things the Lord has laid on our heart is a culture of biblical disciple making in our church. And so for the last 6 years, really probably about 5 years, we have been heavily leaning into that, and it has really changed the way we think about church. It's changed the way we interact. It has made us much greater evangelists. It's just changed everything about our culture. So it was only natural when Scott got the Resilient book to think of me.
That's right. Handed it to you, and because it was just a great connection we had on that topic of discipleship.
Yeah, we seem to talk about that often when we were getting together.
Oh, yeah.
So then you gave me that. And I read it during our shutdown.
Okay.
Sat down and read it. I read it in a day, by the way. And I've said this before. If you're not a fast reader, I'm not a fast reader. It is really an easy read. But now we're going back through, and there's plenty to digest. It's one I would say you read 2-3 times.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's a lot there.
Yeah. It's an easy read. And it just kind of flows in a natural conversation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it really struck home with me. And then Scott and I found ourselves coming back to that conversation often. And so that's how this started.
Yeah.
So Scott, tell them about yourself.
Yeah, certainly. So Scott Connor, Awana missionary here in Northern Michigan, as well as a field director with Awana, and just serve about 85 churches. You're one of our churches, and love to connect with the pastors, ministry leaders, like Pastor Joshua, and it's just a privilege to be able to serve in the ministry of Awana and just see what God is doing. Just incredible work, reaching kids with the gospel and making resilient child disciples that we're going to talk about today.
Well, we want to just go through real quick where you can find us. This didn't start just because Scott and I decided to start this. This started really partly because one of the things the Lord laid on my heart about a year ago now was the opportunities that are out there through electronic ministries. And in fact, we talked about that a couple broadcasts ago. Yeah, about the importance of being where the people are. So the Lord laid that on my heart. I started a YouTube channel. It is growing a little bit. I would love it if you guys are brand new. If you enjoy our content, there's more stuff from us on there. Scott's a regular guest of mine. And then I share videos every week, just coming from a pastor's heart, a pastor's perspective. So if you would subscribe. Also, I'm live streaming there. That's a great place to find this and a great way to share these videos. So all of our videos are there as well. So that's one of the places you can find us. You can find Scott also at Awana, Northern Michigan. Tell them a little bit about your page.
It's a Facebook group page. It's a private page, so you have to, invite yourself, and most likely I'll accept you, but we're a great place to connect and to hear what is going on in the field with Awana, what we're doing in the ministry with Awana. And then we always throw events, things that Awana are putting on, and just ways to connect to further this ministry and help pastors, ministry leaders to be successful at making resilient child disciples. So.
And then the other place you can find us, many of you are watching us right here on A Resilient Conversation with Scott and PJ, but some of you are watching over on my YouTube channel. But we want to make sure everybody ends up landing here on the Facebook page. It's a public page. You can find it, hit like. Here's the importance of this. As we continue this conversation, tonight we're going to have a conversation with Valerie Bell.
Yeah.
We're excited about that, by the way. Super excited about that. And we try to broadcast, we try to live stream at least once a month, and we're hoping maybe we can up that a little bit for you. But what we want you to do is come here, and we want you to be a part of the conversation. You'll find out tonight that we very much want you to be a part of the conversation tonight, but then through the month.
How about we start that now by asking people to, in the comments section, or to post where they're coming from.
Yeah, where you're watching from.
We'd like to see where you're coming from, and to engage with you, because this isn't just us talking. We are going to engage with you all along our way tonight. It's a journey that we're all taking together through this book, Resilient. And so we are inviting you on that journey.
Yeah, and to help us with that, we have another special guest. You won't hear from him, though you did. I think he was part of our very first live stream.
I think so.
But we have a special guest who is going to be in the comments. So he's commenting kind of for us. He's helping us out.
You'll see Trapper Grover. He's one of my ministry team members here in this ministry here in Awana, and he'll be engaging with you on the comment section. So feel free to connect there. Thank you, Trapper, for doing that for us. He says hi all. That's great. So he's going to be engaging and connecting throughout our time. Hey, one thing we're going to do, so stick with us, because we're going to be giving away a free Resilient book at the end of our conversation. All right, we're going to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
And so just a great opportunity to pick that book up for free. And so stick around.
We have got people from all over, Scott. This is really encouraging. This is exciting. Welcome. So let's jump right into it. Why don't we? There is no sense continuing to push
belabor this at all, right? I mean, we're excited. I was talking Valerie. Oh, Valerie Bell, here she is. Look at her. All right.
Hi.
Welcome.
Yeah.
I am so happy to be here. I just wish I had gotten the dress memo, and I would have worn my Make Resilient Disciples t-shirt.
Oh, well, we love what you're wearing. That's great.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
We are so thankful for the time, Valerie, that you're spending with us today. And we just look forward to this conversation. What a privilege and what an honor to have Awana CEO with us and co-author of Resilient. So I know, Valerie, you wrote the first several chapters, right?
Yes, I did. And then I kind of pooped out. I gave it to Matt Markins and the other guys and said, here, finish this for me, will you? It was, it's so interesting because we did work on it together conceptually and idea-wise. I started out by writing a book that I thought was called Future Proofed.
Oh.
And that was a good title. The guys didn't like it. And so I changed it, and I ended up writing a book called Resilient with them.
Yes.
So it was a great process. And I love it now when we go out to speak. If I'm with Matt, he can start a sentence and I can finish it, work so closely together on it. So it was really, I say that this was a love letter to the church. This was a love letter to the church of 2050.
That's right.
So we put our hearts into it. It's not just a technical book that's full of figures and stats. It's in there, but they're there for a reason. And, this sense that we can call the church. I have a dream. We all have it, I think, now. And that is that from the children's wing of the church, a great revival could sweep across the church and across this nation, across the world, and raise up the greatest generation of disciples. I know when I say that, people think, oh, that's hyperbole. That's like, sure. But I realized during COVID, when everybody all around the world, from Bangladesh to Africa to the States to Canada to South America, took to the internet to teach kids, that we have this potentially connected community that can focus on raising up a different kind of disciple for the years ahead.
Right. And we don't need that, right?
Yes.
We'll love to just kind of take a second here and kind of rewind just a little bit before we dive into chapter 2. And if Val, if it's okay, and I feel really weird doing this because you wrote the book, but I want to really, again, this is a journey and there are listeners with us that are new.
Right.
So we really want to pull them in. And so I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview of where we've come. Just take a second and do that. This book, Resilient, written at the beginning, Valerie does, I love that letter that you're talking about, from the leader's perspective to the child. And the question that this book really portrays for us to really consider and to ponder, are we doing enough?
And that's what nailed me. Right. That's when you gave me the book, and Valerie, I've said this to Scott a lot of times, is when I talk to people about being a disciple making, having a disciple making culture, I always get people say, "Oh, here's a book. And thankfully I like this guy. So I read the book. And but literally as soon as I read that, I was in. I was like, oh, I have to finish this book. And that just really gripped me. Also, I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And man, in 2050, where are they going to be?
So that question asked at the beginning, are we doing enough? Are the things we are doing today going to stick in the lives of these kids when they're adults? Is it going to have a lasting impact? And so 2050 is really proposed, and where they'll be our age, or my age. My kids will probably be in their late 30s and 40s, and will they have that spiritual resilience, to live and thrive in that culture? And at the beginning there talks about the heart and spine. Are we doing the things today to prepare them to have heart? To have spine, to have that spine to stand firm for the gospel, to stand firm for the truth of his word, and against the culture that's going to be against them, but then also love, like Christ loved, and love that culture that's just going to be in their face. And if we haven't seen it already, it's coming.
And again, that struck me as a pastor, because that means I have to be intentional as I lead the church. Am I intentionally leading the church in such a way that we're not, I just, that part that said, hey, have we given the kids a great time, basically, or have we given them something that will last them? And it's so easy to get caught up, and we want the kids to have fun in Sunday school. But I know the value, because my kids come home from Sunday school, from Awana, they talk about what they're learning. And man, we have such a small time with them. We've got to make it count.
Yeah. And then chapter 1 dives into, talks about Hayden, right? And he's standing at the flagpole, right? I just love that image, and it speaks because that is the picture of 2050, that resilient child that stands alone, that is a resilient adult, a resilient church leader. And so that really, I know that really, when I share that at churches and talk about that, I'm sure you too, Valerie, I'm like pulling out the tissue papers. And so, we talked about that. And then our last one, we really dived into
just screen discipleship.
Really spent some time there. But, recognizing, and we talked about Mars. We're talking about Mars and child discipleship, right? Right now, today, they're working on, the equipment, the space suit, all the things to prepare for going to Mars. Right now, I think there's a little helicopter that might be taking off on Mars next week. Anyways, so they're all trying to determine what that culture looks like. What is it? What is it going to be like to live in that culture? And so there's a lot of effort and energy and money and time spent in that.
They're investing
a ton, right? To understand what that Martian world looks like. And are we doing enough investment to prepare the kids for that culture of 2050? That is
the Martian world.
Going to be a Martian world.
Right.
Kind of like the analogy, Valerie. We kind of played with that a little bit.
Yeah, that's good. I wish I'd had it for the book.
That was Scott's idea.
Just playing around, that space side in me.
Is there anything in that first chapter there maybe that you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, I do. I want to propose 2 words for us to think about tonight. Both P words. They start with P. One is protection, and the other is preparation. Our children need both. Our mothers, if we had a lot of time tonight, we could sit here and remember the words that she said, look both ways before you cross the street, don't talk to strangers. There's a litany of those, and we all know them. And she was right. It's a dangerous world. She was trying to protect us. But the thing about protection is that it doesn't develop strong, resilient, courageous, brave children. It just doesn't. And so that has to be measured against this whole idea of preparing. You guys use that word a couple times. Are we preparing them for what's ahead? Or are we happy just to get through Sunday? Are we happy just to get through another Sunday? And so, protection says, get in the back seat of the car, fasten your seatbelt. I'm going to drive you around for the rest of your life,
right?
Because I'm the adult. Preparation says, get in the car behind the wheel, fasten your seatbelt, and I'm going to teach you how to drive because you're going to need to learn how to do this. Another idea is that protection says, only swim in the shallow end, only go up to your knees, right? That's protection. Preparation says, get in the water with me. I'm going to teach you how to swim because water's everywhere and you're going to need to know this. So I think when we looked at 2050, we said, what are they going to need? We could see trends beginning. We could see trends that were going to probably continue on into 2050. And then, don't you know, COVID.
Yeah.
And COVID, what I think COVID did was it took those trends and accelerated them. It, like shrunk the years of decades to 2050 and made it all happen right here.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, we weren't prepared. What a year. Probably you said, Scott and PJ, something like this. Never in a million years did I think such and such, right? Yeah, we said that all over the place because it was unbelievable how a virus changed every aspect of our lives, so we weren't prepared. And I'm going to just give you some facts on what's happened to families. It's more recent than what's in the book. But so, of course, our mental health is very fragile right now as a globe. Anxiety disorders have tripled. Depressive disorders have quadrupled. Those seriously considering suicide have doubled. And those, the opioid deaths by abuse of opioids is up 21%.
Wow.
I want you just to check something here. When I say that, what is your natural inclination? If it's protection, you're going to build a moat around your house, right? You're going to keep your kids quarantined for the rest of their lives. And that's a normal and natural response, right? It's not a resilient response, however. A resilient response says, how can I prepare my kids for a world where things happen that you wouldn't have believed could happen in a million years? How do I prepare them for the unknown? So here's the great news. When I hear that, I think it's time to raise up the greatest generation of disciples.
Right.
It's time to give them everything they need for each other, for themselves, for the years ahead. The really good news, I know that those kinds of stats are very depressing, but I want you to hear the really good news, and that is that resilience can be learned. It's not something you're just born with or you're not born with. You can learn. Isn't that great? And
Timothy, we just talked about. We'll talk about that later. Yeah.
And here's the thing: resilience is a spiritual quality. It's the muscle that discipleship builds. It's the result of discipleship. And so, the definition of resilience is a quality that describes the spiritual elasticity of a child or adult that allows them to bend and flex, but not break under the weight of culture. So get this picture. There's not a moat around this resilient person. There's not a fence. They are involved in the culture. They are leading the church. And they get banged up sometimes. They get beat up sometimes. But they are not thrown off by it. They can bend and flex regardless of whatever the culture is pushing on them.
Wow.
I love that picture. I love that picture. And so, you know, at Awana, we're trying to teach kids, you mentioned spine and heart. How do you talk to people whose viewpoint, whose worldview is so different of yours, and be able to address their worldview and still be heard? How do you do that? That's a skill. That's something that can be learned. And I think I don't have to try to convince anybody, if you were on social media, that we Christians probably have a ways to go to learn that, right? I'm trying to learn that. Truthfully, I'm trying to learn that. So I had this example of, it was after the one of the big games and the halftime show that was very sensual and way over, in my opinion, where it needed to be. But it lit up social media. The testosterone was going crazy on social media, you know. And I kept thinking, I wish I knew what to say about this. And there was one woman who said this, and she used spine and heart. She probably doesn't know what spine and heart is. She's just intuitively smart. She said, those women are so gifted. They're so talented. I have their records. I love to watch them dance. She said, but in the shadow of this Superdome athletic place, there are children being trafficked. There is prostitution. She had all the facts. And then she said, and we need to be responsible for what we put out there in the world. Nobody argued with her. Nobody put her on. She was so correct in the way she related to the culture and challenged it. That's what I want to learn to do. And that's what I think, if we would all learn to do that, we would have a hearing. We would have people who aren't turned off by us because we start with great criticism of them and great, you know, we're better than them kind of attitudes. So, so that's part of this preparation, is preparing them to be able to have a place in culture. Here's what I fear, if we don't learn how to do this, culture is going to be so far down the tubes. It will be a very difficult place to live. So, so those are some of the things.
Trevor has a good comment here. He says, preparing kids for the future takes a leap of faith. For me, and he says, it's hard letting my kids venture out on their own. And as a parent, I don't know that I would have ever understood that. Like I said, my kids are young, but I just have to consistently remind myself, God loves my kids so much more than I can ever love my kids. And so, man, just what Valerie said, if we are not doing that, how are they ever going to live the Great Commission? If we just, the natural thing as a parent is, let's build a moat around my house and we're not going to let anybody in. But now they're not going and making disciples themselves.
When my kid comes home and we sit at the dinner table and they ask my daughter, actually, so what's the rainbow flag have to, like, what does that talk? So like have those tough conversations where, unfortunately, and they get their knees scraped, you know, because they have to grow up quicker because they have to know how to interact with that world, but to come at it with a biblical perspective. And so they can stand up in their own world as 5th and 6th graders. And
it's hard enough to do that as parents, but then the importance of doing that as a church, as Sunday school teachers, children's church teachers, Awana leaders, whatever it is. And something we've talked a lot about on here, Valerie, is in that now what do we do when we're saying verses, right? The kids are saying verses and one of those questions come up. Well, you know, we're encouraging and our leaders are learning that what's more important at that point, listening to a verse or having some life on life interaction with those kids.
And there's a balance there.
There is, absolutely. But man, we've got to take those opportunities we have. And there again, that's why also outside of church is just continue to spend opportunity, spend time with them.
So there, you really brought something up there, PJ, because at Awana, we've been examining our own ministry for the past 5 years. And we asked ourselves the hard question, are we creating disciples? Are we raising generation of disciples? Or are we raising up Bible memory champions? There's a difference. And both are good.
Yes.
But I remember this so vividly. Wes Stafford is on our board, and he was the president of Compassion for several decades and has a tremendous heart for children. I mean, he is a major advocate for kids. And he said to me, is it more important in that handbook sometimes that they completed their verses, or that the person who is there for them writes, "We are so glad you're here and God loves you." What's more important? And Scott, the first time I said that at Awana, it got edited out. That was pretty radical for us at Awana a few years ago. It's not anymore. And we truly believe exactly what you said, that relationship with that child, that loving, caring adult, is the first foot into discipleship many times. Another, I think I'd like to give your listeners these little handles on resilience. Besides what we just talked about, the spine and heart, there is this other thing that we can teach our children, and that is a resilient person. When they fall, when they stumble, they get back up. They're not overly concerned that they've done that. They keep going. And I love this idea of teaching our children to say, in circumstances that are uncomfortable or painful or disappointing, the first thing I want them to say is, God is for me. God is for me. Even if I messed up, even if I blew it, even if, I did something terrible, God is still for me. And to me, that's a message that we can help children learn. We can learn it ourselves. To me, it's the message of Scripture. There's a lot of stories in there, but the overarching theme is that not only does God love us, but He is for us. He wants to be on our side, helping us. So I love that little handle as well, to teach that to kids.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, and again, that's the key, is we can memorize verses. I grew up in Awana, and I'm terrible at memorizing verses now. The verses that come back to me are Awana verses.
Oh, yeah.
I can be reading out of an English Standard Version or a NASB, and I get to certain verses and I start saying it in King James, because that's
right.
how back as a kid, that's how I learned them. But there can also be that disconnect of, I learned these verses and I had fun, but what now? Right.
And we've seen time and again, when I talk to adults my age or even younger that are no longer in the church, that I was in Awana when I was a kid.
Yeah. It happens to me all the time, right? You've heard the story. Yeah. So I'm a first responder. I get into a lot of houses around my community, and when they find out who I am, I will fairly often hear, "Oh, I went to Awana when I was a kid," and they had a great time. You look at their lifestyle, you look at even maybe the reason you're there, God is not even a thought in their life. And it breaks my heart as a pastor. I say, okay, where did we miss it? Where did we miss it? Now, those were before I was here, and we're working hard to change that now, but it's a long road of changing that.
And yet God still says in His Word, right, it will never return void. So sometime in their life,
we know that. Yeah. Absolutely. But I think this is why this struck again with me, is let's go beyond the memorization. We need that, but now what do we do with these verses we've memorized?
Yeah.
So I'll tell you a story about that. I was by myself in California and ended up at a table with another woman who was by herself. And she was the vice president of development at Michigan State University. And I was really interested in what she was doing, because I'm having to get into donor life myself. And then I told her about Awana, and she said, "Oh, that's so interesting. I grew up Lutheran. And I memorized a lot of scriptures as a kid. Now, I don't believe any of that anymore, but every once in a while, a verse comes to my mind." And I didn't say this to her, but I thought it, and I thought, and you're sitting with me at lunch, And you're going to go visit a donor who's going to tell you how Christ changed his life after college. Then you're going to get on a plane and the person next to you is going to have a Bible. The hound of heaven is after you and bringing those verses that are what Scripture says, they dwell in us richly. They don't die. They continue to habitate there. So yeah, and PJ, I thought there was a certain spiritual aura about you, and then you said you were an Awana kid. That explained it.
Yeah, that's right.
I meet people who are, my age, and they did Awana. I was on Ed Stetzer's podcast, Ed from Wheaton College, Billy Graham Center, and he was trying to be very sympathetic to Awana during COVID. He said, it must be really tough. You have those 70-year-old women who run those clubs, and now they have to stay home. And I listened to this and I raised my hand and I said, Ed, that would be me.
Oh my.
That would be me. And probably what I think about that and about you, PJ, is that as a 7-year-old, maybe that woman or you came to club, then you started working in club as an older kid. You went to college, but then you had your own children and you brought them to club. And even when your children were gone, I'm empty nester now. That woman probably is empty nester he was referring to. They're still doing Awana. They're still doing that. Why? It's because they can see it works. They can see the discipleship that's implanted in it actually does work in a person's life. So, so we are not just evaluating everybody else in Kidmin world or in church world. We're evaluating ourselves. And we're saying we're going to change the things we need to change in order to make resilient disciples. And, it's so interesting. We assess everything else in the world. I mean, you can't buy anything without them wanting you to fill in, how pleased were you with our product? We assess whether kids are learning to read or not. And we should. All those things are good. But the most important thing, the discipleship of kids doesn't get assessed. We don't know if we are discipling. In fact, we did a study, and I think the question was, are you creating disciples? And mostly it was around the 40% mark said, we think so. We think so, but not sure at all. And so, Scott, what we want to do is not only write a book about resilience, but we want to start a movement among churches where we can give them assessment tools. Most churches think they might be creating disciples, but there's no way for them to measure it. We want to give them assessment tools so that they can look at their programming, look at how they're approaching it, making sure that all the elements of discipleship are there, and then be able to go, we're doing great in this 70%, but we're missing the 30% over here. Isn't that cool?
Yeah,
I think that's such a huge tool for churches. And those churches that are able to come along and take that trip, I want to certify them as resilient churches. So when you go somewhere in a community and you want your children to be discipled, you look for that resilient church. Isn't that,
that's neat.
That's I'm talking about dreams now, right? But that's the big dream.
Well, Scott probably knows Valerie just hit a button for me, right?
Yeah. A
couple of them. Here, and this is especially for those listening. Here's where I really, I guess, a hot topic button for me, because as I read this book, Valerie, I was thrilled about this focus on the kids. But you said it. You said a lot of churches don't even know if they're discipling their kids. What about the adults?
Right.
What about the adults? You don't even know for sure if you're doing that. And where does it start?
Yeah.
In the idea of this is it's got to start somewhere. So if we can at least start with the kids, right? Because they're important. But if it starts from the top down, which is the goal that we're working at, then what happens is when you're their leader and you have this heart for discipleship because you're being discipled and you're discipling another adult, what are you naturally going to do? You're going to love those kids in that way. Now that's going to pour out and you're going to want to take more time.
And that whole life on life that we've been talking about.
Right. Exactly. And that's what we're finding is it's just becoming more of a natural thing in our church because that's what's happening from the top down. But it's those stats that Valerie you gave there, it's no different with other church, all the way through the church.
Yeah.
We've missed it. We haven't been intentional enough.
Mm.
So 20 years ago when Sticky Faith was published and it said the primary discipleship responsibility is in the home, children grow in the soil of their parents' faith. Everybody said, yeah, that makes sense. But we had not prepared our parents to be able to disciple their kids.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have maybe kind of a similar situation in the church. I think that a lot of people adults end up getting discipled in the KidMin programs where they're volunteering. They're really truthfully. In fact, there was a former CEO at Awana who he grew up very poor. His mother took them to church and they were too ashamed to go in. They sat on the steps and listened. Mm-hmm. And when he became an adult, he came to Christ and he would listen to Christian radio. He connected with me actually because I was on radio at the time. But the thing that turned everything for him towards discipleship was the pastor asked him if he would lead the Awana Club. And this is David Genn. He said to the pastor, "What is this?" And the pastor said, "I think it's something about running around circles and into poles." Which is kind of a good description in some ways, right? But it was through his own discipleship came that way. And so maybe we need to get these adults involved.
And teens too.
Yes, the teens too.
Right.
I've got a great
top down.
I got a great story from a church in Grand Rapids, actually, a smaller church. I met with Pastor Josh, I think. Name's not ringing a bell, but anyways, sitting down with him and what's your connection to Awana? Well, he said, I never went to the Awana Club or it was never really discipled as a child, came to faith at a young age, but it really never had an impact in my life until I came to Awana as a teenager and was asked by the pastor if he would listen to verses and do sections with kids. And he said, "I'm a pastor today." I'm a pastor today because that pastor asked me and because of the discipleship that happened in my life through discipling a child. It was incredible.
Right. But that's unfortunate because nobody discipled him. So see, that's my point, right? That's where we're missing it.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah. Because so this problem that we were talking about here is that's why I get so excited about this because it's drawing attention really to a greater problem.
Yeah, a bigger picture.
Finding.
Yeah. Because it's a question that we're asking. And that movement that you're talking about, Valerie, I know there's coming up in, we got some background noise here.
Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Right. You're fine. The Child Discipleship Fellowship or Forum. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that and share what that's about. I know that's kind of a starting point for a potential movement, and we want to, we're excited about that within Awana.
Love to talk about it. So if you have a copy of Resilient, you'll recognize that there are a lot of endorsements of it. Mm-hmm. And there are endorsements from people you might think of as our competitors, like Orange. It's unlikely people in a way who have endorsed this across the kingdom. And the reason for that is that this is resonant. It's a resonant need. When people read it, they went, wow, that's putting the words on the issue that we're all struggling with. So the idea behind the Child Discipleship Forum this September is that we're going to bring everybody who's resonant with it up to 600 people because we have COVID limits. We're not going to say, do this, do this, do this. What we are going to say is, let's talk about this. Let's get it all out in the open and come up with a strategy. Let's come up with a plan. So I'm going to digress just a minute on this whole strategy thing. This is one of my hot buttons. I don't understand why we don't have a strategy.
Right.
Why don't we? So right after I had come to Awana, I was visited by Africans who work with Awana in Africa. And they said, do you know what's happening in Africa? And I said, pretty sure I don't, because I was such a newbie. And they said this. They said the Middle Eastern oil money is being dumped into the Christian parts of Africa, and they're building mosques with free schools. Everybody can have an education if they go to the mosque. And the Christian families, I mean, if you're a poor Christian family, how do you say no to that? And I remember just feeling so sick over that why don't we have a strategy? Right. Why don't we come together and tackle this for peace? Right. And then they came back this year, and it was so funny. They said, have we told you what's happening in Africa? And I said, I know you're going to tell me. And they said, well, those mosques are getting all the kids. They're getting all the kids. Wow. They said, but there is another thing that's happening. They've started these after school programs. And I said, oh, rats. And he said, yeah, those after school programs are called Awana.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So now we've got all of the children from all the faiths coming to Awana. So the idea behind the Child Discipleship Forum is to come up with a strategy. A Resilient wasn't written for Awana. It was written for a much broader audience, and any child ministry, KidMin, any curriculum can use the principles behind resilient discipleship in their own programming. That to me is such a wonderful dream, to think that if we all work together globally, think that.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We have the potential. That phrase, the greatest generation of disciples, came to me while I was praying and complaining to God about COVID. And I was saying to him, what are you going to do about this? And we have suffered enough. When are you going to show up? I'm so worried about Awana. I'm so worried about the church. And the only thing that God would say to me during that time was, raise up the greatest generation of disciples.
Amen.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point, and that's what we have really kind of pushed on here. We talk a lot about Awana because, well, you're an Awana missionary. We have Awana in our church. The book was written, and we have a lot of people from Awana interacting, but we encourage, I've talked to pastor friends who don't even know what Awana is, and I said, you need to read the book.
Right.
You need to start thinking about, because it's the Great Commission is what it is. I'd like to throw up a comment here and see if we can maybe react to this, or a question, really. Richard Lovegrove says, can we proactively disciple within the handbook time, or are we reacting to the clubber's inquiries? I think that's a great question to start wrapping our minds around. What does this look like? And you guys can jump in, but I think that's both, really. I mean, as you have to stir the conversation with the kids, for one thing, and let them know that it's okay to talk about these things.
Right.
So you're going to have these inquiries, you're going to have things, but should we not really just be, I think you said it, Valerie, even you talked about just being comfortable with knowing how to interact. Well, part of that is just asking questions and getting involved in their lives and proactively discipling that way.
And it's not about the handbook, right?
Right.
I think we can get focused on that. That's a relationship. Now, is the handbook a tool? Yes. The handbook's a tool, right? Let's be honest about that. And
that's a built-in time that you're with those kids.
Yes, it is. Yep. But that discipleship is relational.
Yeah.
And ensuring that, I think
life on life.
And the three segments that I really think about when I think about small group time, you have that relationship piece. Ask how is your week going? Or we prayed for your grandmother who's in the hospital. How is she? And kids thrive on that community, that belonging. And we're going to talk about that. We don't jump into it too much, but they need that belonging in a day where they don't have it. Right. And the church is filling a gap in a lot of ways within the communities, because the parents they don't have a relationship with their kids.
Right.
And I'm talking more unchurched, right?
Right. Well, we talked about that here. I mean, we didn't really get into it yet, but 50% of kids, it's right here in chapter 3. They're going to experience how their family life break up. Well, that just deteriorates relationships. And many of those are not like you said, their parents are not even in church. They don't even know how to answer those things, nor do they care.
Yeah. So in that small group time, you have that relational piece, then you really dive into the discipleship and the scripture memory. And all three of those are very important. You can't, you got to have all three. It's easy to just, in years past, use like, hey, I may know your name, but share your verse. Well, there's not the discipleship, right, life on life that we're talking about.
And what I've found is when you get serious about it, you start praying about it, right? So if it's Awana and it's Wednesday night or whenever you do Awana and you're praying as you're driving to Awana, Lord, help me to be involved and invested more than just listening to a verse. God is going to guide that. God is going to guide you, whether it's, the Holy Spirit is either going to lead you to a proactive, or he's going to bring those questions up through the kids.
Yeah. And it's, again, church is filling the gap, but at the same time, our parents, you're talking about discipleship, right? Our parents need to really step in.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
There's a huge need today, and they've got to be a part of this conversation because they got to recognize their place in discipling their kids for that 2050. That's so important.
So you can't disciple if you don't know. You can't disciple if you don't care. You can't disciple that way. The relationship is like one of the legs on a three-legged stool of discipleship. It's so very, very important. I sometimes wonder about the Barna that we're losing 50%-ish of our kids. One of the reasons they are not sticking with us is that we didn't really know them. So after they were off our rolls and after they had gone on with their lives, nobody was still wondering how they were doing or keeping track of them. We just let them wander away without anybody chasing them. So that relationship part, in fact, the UN and Harvard have done studies that indicate that the most important factor for a child that mitigates anything that can happen to a child in the world, being a refugee or experiencing homelessness of parents who have died, that child can get through if there is the presence of a loving, caring adult. We don't know what these kids are going through when they come to us. I remember taking Rowan, my oldest, to Awana in the middle of the year he started, and there was a little girl there, a little bossy, pushy girl who had every award known to mankind on her vest and could have run a third world country, but was running Rowan. And I could see by the way he responded to her, he kind of had a crush on her. He did everything she said. And then in the group time, she raised her hand. She said, I want you to pray for my daddy. He doesn't know Jesus.
Wow.
I thought what a world of hurt was contained in those worlds. He doesn't know Jesus. Then you know what? The next week we had Grand Prix. Guess who wasn't there? Because there was no daddy.
Wow.
Home to help her with that. That's what I mean. We need to know these children. So listen when they're telling you during handbook time. Listen to what they're saying. They're trying to tell you who they are.
I think that leads right into a great lesson that Scott and I were talking about before this. On Sunday, we're preaching through Acts, and I was in Acts 16 where Paul meets Timothy. And as I studied, I love Timothy. I love the Paul-Timothy relationship. But I learned some things this last week about that I didn't really fully understand. And I just had not stopped to take the time to see how much of really a messed up life Timothy came from. His mother and grandmother were Jews. And his mom married a Greek, which was not okay by the law, but she did it anyway. So her choices poured down to Timothy because Timothy, he would worship. He would go and worship with mom and grandma, but he was not circumcised. So he didn't really fit in with the Jews. He couldn't really worship with the Jews, but he wasn't an atheist. He wasn't a Greek. He didn't, he wasn't any of those things. So he was literally stuck in the middle, which that impacted him. Paul often writes to him about his tears. He writes to him to be strong. It broke him really in a lot of ways. Wow. So here's this young man. And then scholars would say he lost his dad. By the time Luke writes Acts 16, Timothy's dad wasn't even alive anymore. Okay. So then how does he go on to be this pastor? It's because of a guy like Paul who steps in and knew him well, and steps in and comes alongside and built Grand Prix cars, right? Did
right.
those things.
Yeah,
And that's what I challenge our people. I said, we can be the father that these kids need. We can be the mothers and the fathers. And it may be that dad is in the picture, but they don't care. I remember when in the days of being a youth pastor, how many times my wife would be out late at night with the girls, taking them shopping to buy them school supplies because mom didn't, or whatever it might be. You have to invest in these kids in a personal way. And
that's challenging for the leader to do.
It's not easy
in a world where it's like, like my phone and there's so many distractions. And I'm not saying discipleship takes work. We've talked about that, and it takes investment, takes time. And
well, Jamie says here, he hit it right on the head. I put it up here a minute ago, but ministering to parents and their children, you'll discover that the ministry of Awana is not 15 to 20 minutes in a club night.
Right.
It's way more than that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it's hard for us.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. Well, we've been in all over chapter 1, chapter 2. We didn't get to really dive into a ton. I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah,
this has been a great conversation.
Think probably what we'll do is try to really dive in, because I don't want to just
scoot
through.
Yeah.
We're not in a hurry.
Yeah,
and this was a great opportunity to have Valerie, and I was thrilled. I mean, the conversation was great, and I trust you guys enjoyed it as well. And really want to thank Valerie for giving of her time.
Certainly.
And being here and sharing. What a fun time. But we're not done yet. You still got something you promised them, Scott.
Well, I know we got a book giveaway, right? But first off, Valerie, do you have any closing thoughts or things you would like to share with us or with people that are listening? I want to give you a moment on that. Parting words.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what would be some good parting words. I want to say this. I am extremely optimistic about the future of the church.
Amen.
That's good.
And even if we have to go through some self-examination that's a little painful, God has said that the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. It's already, that battle has been won. And I'm excited. I won't be here in 2050. But I'm excited to think of what we might raise up that will be so beautiful and so winsome and so able to win in a culture that will be shocked by that, I think. Oh, yeah. So, I'm very excited. I hope to see a lot of people at the Child Discipleship Forum. Come and bring your best ideas. Come and bring your heart. Come and bring your prayers. And join so many from all different parts of Christianity who are going to be there for this most crucial, most critical conversation.
That's right.
It's at the top, folks. We have to have this.
Certainly. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And we look forward to the Child Discipleship Forum. We'll be posting about that and more information to come about that.
Yeah. So I think this is another opportunity here to just kind of plug our Facebook page, and they're all over the place. I mean, Valerie brought up Awana has a great podcast that they do. This is such a conversation that keeps going. And it has to keep going.
Oh, certainly.
And so we just want to kind of be a small part of that. We want to be a landing place. That the question that was proposed tonight about, hey, what does this discipleship maybe even look like? Those are the kind of things we want our page to be throughout the month. I'm trying this thing and I'm running up against this problem. Let's drop it here. And Scott and I have said countless times, we are not the experts. Right. We're not experts. We're just here trying to help you through this thing. So it very likely might be that somebody else that's on here can jump in and say, hey, here's how I've worked through this situation, or here's how I've done this, because this truly is a conversation. It's hard. You need encouragement. I have really found the value in Facebook pages through COVID, because you don't have that interaction with other people. And I've really seen that start to take off with these different niches. Like I'm on a podcast one, I'm in a YouTube one, I'm in a disciple making one, and people just post their questions, and several people can jump in, and there's so much you can learn from other people and what they're doing.
Well, we're stronger when we're together.
Absolutely.
Right? Ironing sharper than iron. We talk a lot about that. So that's great. Well, so I have a book to give away. I have a book here. So I want to invite you, Trapper is going to go ahead and put up my email address. The first person to email me their address and tell us a little bit about this this time that you've been with us, I'm going to send you a book and free of charge, and as long as you read it.
Yeah,
I mean, they kind of.
How do they not want to read it after the conversation today?
No selling it at garage sales, right?
If they're going to tell me, I'll go rescue it.
And next time we'll be in chapter 3, diving into getting into belong, believe, become. And there's a lot of great content there. So Trapper will also put up the place that you can find Resilient.
It's in there. He's got it
in there.
Yep.
Okay, great. Awesome. Yep. So yeah, we look forward to this. I'll look for an email and then I will let you know if you're the winner. And yeah, thank you so much. This has been incredible. Thank you, Valerie. Yeah,
thank you guys, this was really great fun for me tonight, and love that you're doing this.
We're having a blast.
Yeah, we're having a ton of fun. Yep. So, well, thanks again. Thanks everybody. I think we're out of here.
All right.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Until next time.
See ya.